Mathew Hayman, welcome to the Espresso Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
First of all, Mathew, what is it that you're doing?
Retired 2 years ago from professional cycling, and I'm now a director at Mitchelton Scott, or Green Edge. Be a few changes next year, but been doing that for just on 2 years. Well, just retired after Tour Down Under in 2019, so that's keeping me busy.
How do you find the change going into the car rather than being in the peloton now?
Yeah, it was different to what I expected. I really would like to be able to get a lot of the riders to spend a day in the car, just to kind of see. I had for 19 years as a rider, and I had my fair share of criticism, or didn't know exactly what was going on, and you're asking for information, and so now to see it from the other side, there's a bit more of trying to. Communication is the big thing, and trying to work out what's being said on the radio, but also sometimes even knowing what's going on in the race. As a rider, you're very much in control. You know what's going on with yourself, with your teammates, what's going on in the race itself. But sitting in a car behind, you don't always have all the information, which as a rider, I thought they did. So
I think they're quite lucky. I think they're quite lucky nowadays that with obviously all the online video and stuff, it's a lot easier for them to see in the car, whereas most of the races I think me and Gary have done when we were throughout the years, generally they're not as well televised, so you don't have that. So we've certainly spent a bit of time in the back of the car as well, and you've not got a clue what's going on. You're just sitting as a passenger for 5 hours.
No, and that's our job, as directors, to try and gather that information, use the technology that's available to search, to Tour de France. I mean, yes, it's all live, 100% live stream. Tour de France is on every single channel, but go up into a mountain and with no mobile reception. Race radio is not working or not giving you the information that you require, and you're pretty lost. So we've got, our own tricks of trying to get that information. But information is crucial in those stages. And then what do you do with that information, and how much do the riders need or want?
Yeah, and just in terms of the technology you were saying there, do you guys have live data? So you see quite a lot of it now on the telly, which is mega interesting for a lot of people to look at. Do you guys have that in the car, or is it?
Yeah, that's not as useful to us. Yeah, we might have it. Look, so we're trying to follow the race and actually see what's going on. Just actual video of the race is helpful to see which teams are where and exactly where the guys are. Some of the Velon races, when we do have the live GPS location, that can be very, very handy for the directors to see exactly which part of the peloton the guys are in and if there's any splits. And then we're also using GPS to have a look at the course, to pre-plan the course, and to know the gradients of all the climbs. We can load critical points in the race, and so we know when they're coming up as well. So
absolutely amazing, how technology has been such a game changer.
Yeah, gone are the days of pulling out the map and having a look.
Seeing where the wind's coming from.
We still get out on the side of the road and throw grass in the air. So
check which way the flags are blowing and stuff like that.
But it's been interesting transition.
Yeah,
it's certainly one of the exciting parts when you do get a bit of wind change, especially in a lot of the classics races. When you see a team moving up to the front and you're just and you know that the other teams haven't seen what's happening, and you're just
here we go. Yeah.
It's nice now, but I tell you what, when I was a rider and we'd go out to the Middle East and ride through of Qatar, it was a nasty way to start the year, because it's pretty nervous and stressful, and it happens so quickly, and those echelons form really quickly. So
where you lived back in Australia when you started cycling, what was the kind of terrain like and the weather like in your area?
Yeah, so I got into it through my older brother, and around Canberra we started. And so a pretty good city for riding bikes. I had a velodrome there, and some good roads in the city. It's a fairly new city, and so a lot of bike paths and infrastructure in the city. And then out we could get into the hills, and we're not talking about the same kind of mountains as Europe, but there were some hills. So really good cycling community. Like when I was growing up, there had already been Neil Stevens and Stephen Hodge coming over to Europe and racing professionally. And then since then, Michael Matthews, Michael Rogers, Rory Sutherland, there's been a bunch of riders come out of Canberra. So quite a nice community, but also a great place to ride your bike.
Yeah. And you turned pro then in the year 2000, Matthew.
Yep. So did 3 years as an amateur in Holland and Belgium, and then turned pro in 2000.
How did you really get from that young age to being in Europe? One thing that everybody wants to know is like how do these people get to that level? Like, what was your volume of training when you were a kid?
So to try and condense what was a number of years, I guess. I followed my older brother into the sport. So he was riding and racing. He's 5-6 years older than me, so he was kind of a real role model for me, the way he trained and the way he conducted himself, the way he respected his bike. And then I started with the club with Michael Rogers, actually, who went on to be world time trial champion a number of times.
Wow. Okay.
Tour de France. So we were the two young kids, 10-year-olds, riding around in the club.
Wow.
So it was hard to win a club race, I'll tell you what.
Of all the mates they have, Matthew.
So we saw a lot of guys come and go over the years, and it was funny to end up at Sky and be rooming together later.
Amazing.
Amazing. I guess we got picked up and went through the state, through the state academy, which was in my lead up to Junior World Championships. So I was already kind of identified then as, a possibility to go to Junior World Championships, which would then lead on to a national team. And I think at the time, and Australia still is pretty strong on the track and looking for results on the Olympics and the track program. So kind of identified there, did well at Junior World Championships, second in the time trial. And that, was the stimulus for me moving to Belgium, and probably the result that got me a start was a last-minute start on the brand new Rabobank development team. They'd really kind of filled the roster, and then late in the year, we made some inquiries, and because my brother was already over here racing in Holland, it was a good fit to have that little bit of, I was able to live with my brother and his soon-to-be wife at the time, and that kind of, there were other options to go to Italy or something, but, as an 18, 19-year-old, it was good to have some family around.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
Do you think that, see when you went to Belgium, you obviously said there about you had the choice of going to Belgium or Italy or whatever. At that time when you moved there, was your body composition suited to Belgium or suited, was that kind of where your choice came from?
Yeah, and look, I didn't know that I was going to be a classics rider, or I think as a 19-year-old, you're still trying to find your body competition. But, I was definitely a big lad and a strong time trialer at the time. That didn't ever really come back as a professional. But, yeah, as soon as I came to Holland, I really started enjoying the racing in both Holland and Belgium, that short, punchy style of racing. And it's still where, my physical capabilities are. I seem to have fairly good endurance, but, that minute power, that kind of effort, not a pure sprinter, but, and just kind of also the kind of, the controlled aggression that you need for a 6-hour classic, where you need to be on it all day and have that concentration, yet not be overdoing it and making decisions all the time. Really enjoy that style of racing.
And would you say, Matthew, was there a sort of breakthrough season or race or turning point? You actually thought to yourself, you know what, I can go from a good pro to actually make it onto the World Tour?
One of my very first races with the amateur team, I did quite well. Raced Circuit de Mines in France and was racing against some professional teams at the time. FDJ were racing there and doing quite well, and that showed the team of Rabobank that, I was pretty all-round kind of rider. And then I kind of stagnated a bit as an amateur and was playing the team role. We had some really, really good riders, and every year a couple of them were older than me, and they were winning races, and I was helping them out a lot. And it got to a point where I did have to kind of, go my own chances, and actually won the Dutch National Road title as an under 23. Which probably, is a bit frowned. I had the jersey, the medal, everything. I had no idea what the Dutch national anthem was, but that was in '99, and
Right.
And I think that was a big part of, I'd seen the guys that won that race the 2 previous years had turned pro straight away, and I wasn't going to let that slip away. So in my last year, I definitely was looking to win more races and secure that pro contract. But yeah, it was another, you turn pro, and I thought I'd kind of made it. And looking back, it was a long road from there, and you start at the bottom. And I think even my aspirations changed quite a bit in the first years of being a pro, and just really tried to carve out a niche of being a good domestique and keeping my contract rather than, winning stages of the Tour de France, which is what I dreamt about as a young kid.
Sure, and it was a really intelligent move to do that, really strategic, Mathew, identifying actually at the very top tier, you've really got to shine at a particular role to make it.
Yeah, it was hard. You came from winning under 19s, winning in the amateur ranks, and then you turn pro and realise that. And I'd seen a few other guys around me that had tried to walk the walk and ended up being put on the outer. And if you weren't valuable, you weren't winning, and you weren't doing anything else, you're on the outer pretty quick. Look, I'm racing with guys like Oscar Freire and Eric Decker. These guys are the best of the best, and so I really needed to just try and support those guys in winning races as much as possible and keep my spot. And it was pretty hard fought for the first 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did get my niche then, and then I started and changed that role a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, you look now at a lot of the riders that are coming through that are these like super domestiques, and they seem to excel now because they're spending hours and hours on the front. You just watch them and you're just I'm just in awe of how strong these guys are and how strong they're getting.
Yeah.
But then when you do finally get that, you get let off the leash, and then you go and do what you've done.
Just following on neatly into this, Mathew, we can't not mention that absolutely phenomenal Paris-Roubaix victory. You were the underdog going into that, and it was probably a lot of viewers are familiar with the Green Edge backstage passes, and there's an amazing video. We'll put the link in the description below. You'd ridden it then 13 times. You had a broken arm as well, was it 6 weeks before that as well, Mathew? Talk us through your mindset, and was there anything different about that particular day?
Yeah, so, look, Roubaix was a race. I had some good results there and was always putting pressure, and I really loved that race. As much as I loved all the classics, it was the one that kind of stood out for me as, just suiting me more than the other ones. So I always put a bit more pressure on myself for a result there than I did in, say, Flanders or Gent-Wevelgem. I broke my arm, had a really good lead up to the season, was feeling great, and it was the first classic of the year, Het Nieuwsblad or Het Volk at the time. And so 4 weeks I think I had my arm in cast for about 2 weeks, and then I had a brace on, but pretty much spent 4 weeks on the home trainer. And really I was just kind of, filling in the gaps and hoping that I might be able to ride a classic, hoping the doctors were wrong. They said 6 weeks from the time I broke it till I could race again, and Roubaix was 6 weeks and 1 day. So I thought, why not? The doctors thought I was a bit crazy. Look, I asked about changing programs and being put onto the Giro squad, which would start a few weeks later, and there wasn't really a spot. So my program was the classics and then a break. So I figured I'd try and save some of that work that I'd done. I'd spent, months in Australia. I'd done altitude training camp. I'd prepared from November the year before for these races, and why not do 4 weeks on the home trainer? I spent 3 months training for it.
Yeah.
So then, that brings me to really spent that time just kind of getting through. Was doing some okay work, but rocked up at the race even a week out, not knowing I was going to ride and being totally relaxed. Just happy to be there. It was a sunny day. It was a tailwind. I was just happy to be in Roubaix and riding and racing again. And, I could feel even, in the days before that the other guys that had been through all the classics were a little bit weary, a bit tired. They'd been racing for a couple of months and, I was coming in pretty fresh. So that was one thing, my freshness physically, but also my freshness mentally, that I was just happy to be there and wasn't putting any pressure on myself for a result.
And just being cool and relaxed about it, as maybe in previous seasons you had sort of knew, okay, today could be the day, and maybe just being a little bit more uptight, but that approach of being completely more relaxed worked in your favour in the end.
100%. I mean, you feel like by putting pressure on yourself, by getting uptight, that it means you care, that it means that it means something. But ultimately you can only do what you can do. And even those times that I was uptight and I was, I still got a couple of top tens. But it took those years of experience. It took all of those things to come together and just, to be off the radar in some ways and slip into that breakaway and just have a perfect day.
Slip into that breakaway that was 170 plus kilometres. So how did you ride it in the breakaway? So probably most people that are maybe reading this have probably been in a breakaway before, and depending on the type of race that you do, the breakaway is either like full gas, flat chat, and you're just trying to stay away from everybody, or were you managing? Was it all about managing, waiting for other people to come across, or?
Yeah. Look, so I think 2011, I'd jumped in a breakaway that went across to and was almost a winning move in Roubaix, and I got very excited in that breakaway, and we rode across. It was the year that Johan van Zumeren won. I started attacking early. I was in the final of Roubaix, and I made many mistakes, and I thought that was my only chance to do well in Roubaix, and I lay awake for months on end, just thinking how silly I was. So even though I was in Roubaix in 16 just to be out in the breakaway, I jumped once or twice. I mean, it took 90k for the break to go, of absolutely mad racing. And then I looked around in the breakaway. Most of the guys that I was with had been racing for 90k, where I'd only jumped once or twice. And so most of them were pretty tired. We weren't never going to get a lot of lead because we, only got away not far before the first sector. And it was that experience of racing for so long to say, look, I don't control when the bunch catches us. I'm just out here, so I don't have to fight for the sectors. Yeah, let's see, I can get through Arenberg with no hiccups. I want to be able to get through a couple of these other sectors, just comfortably. So it was very much control. I'm not going to make this breakaway go any faster. Just focus on saving energy and using it to get as deep into the race as possible. And hopefully, I wasn't even the team leader for the race, so hopefully a couple of those guys will come across and I'll be fresh enough to help them in the final.
Talking about decisive moments, myself and David, we had sort of picked up on one of the decisive moments when it looked like Ian Stannard had sort of come across you and it sort of took in one of the lines quite tight, and then you started to get distance. That looked quite a decisive moment there, Mathew.
Yeah, so eventually we did get caught. I mean, a lot of stuff went on in that Roubaix. Fabian being caught behind, and Tom came across to us, and eventually we were whittled down to a pretty select group, and then into the final 15k there was 5 of us, and going on to Carrefour de l'Arbre, which is probably one of the worst sectors of Roubaix for where it is and how bad it is. And everybody wanted to be in the front, and Sepp went from the attack and on the last left-hand corner, which I'd seen in the past a couple of guys crashing on that corner. I think one of my teammates, Fletcher, had gone down there before.
That's right.
So sometimes that experience is also detrimental. So I knew that you can crash on that corner, and when Ian came underneath, I maybe overreacted and grabbed a handful of brakes, but I lost contact there, and I kind of felt like my race was over, and I thought, fifth, damn it, I was pretty close, and who knows what's coming behind, because still 15k to the finish, and you just don't know. We'd only just dropped a group before that, and they could come past the next minute, you're 20th. I've had it all happen to me in Roubaix over years. But that was a pretty short-lived kind of mental state, and I said, look, I've come this far. Why not just see how far you can go and give it everything? So I just kind of switched those negative thoughts off and said, let's see what we can do. And by the time I got back on, it was almost the opposite. All of a sudden I felt a bit more in control and a bit more empowered. So without having that, maybe I would have just kind of followed the guys in, thinking I was the worst out of the 5, but really just changed my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to be able to, those level of riders, to be able to peg them back, get back on, and maybe, that, as you said, that maybe that little other 5% that gave you on the finale going around the velodrome, that mental sort of thought of, actually, I've just pulled these guys back, and I'm actually looking around at their faces and thinking, geez.
And hitting them.
And another thing, I need to mention is just not having done, the traditional build-up, not having raced Flanders the week before. I was really concerned about the distance. I've been doing double ergo sessions. I've done 1 or 2 6-hour rides. I raced the weekend before in Spain, a 200k race, but still just doing 2-hour ergo sessions is not the same. And so there was a, conscious kind of feeling today that this is going to run. These are great legs, but they're going to run out soon. They're going to run out, and just when are they going to run out? But luckily enough, I had good legs to play.
So these 2-hour sessions on the turbo, the indoor trainer. So you were doing split days. You were doing, as far as I'm aware, doing split days. Now, do you think that? So anytime that I've ever been chatting to anybody, I would always say that 2 hours on the turbo is like 2.5 to 3 hours outdoors, because you're no freewheeling. It's literally on the go. So you're 4 hours there. You're probably getting 5.5 per day. How did you with the split days, did that help with nutrition? Because I find it very hard to kind of keep on top of things on the indoor trainer in terms of nutrition. Hydration's fine because it's always roasting, but you tend to forget about the eating.
Yeah, look, I came out of it fit. Even though there was limited hours, I think I did do 21 hours on a home trainer, but that sounds like a lot. But when you're used to doing a lot more on the road, it's quite limited kind of hours. But you, like you said, there was no fluff. Whenever I got on there, it was just I was working an hour and a half to 2 hours morning and then evening. Generally, I'd be doing an interval session in the morning and then a bit more, sometimes some intervals in the evening, but longer kind of, just sub, tempo or spike tempo work. But the morning was kind of when the hard stuff was done. And the evening was just to kind of push it out and get another session in. I've got my own little theory about the heat as well, doing all that work, whether it's, that might have helped and that extra, I wasn't, now I've got big fans going and all that kind of thing. At the time, I didn't have much going. So heart rate was through the roof. Power was hard to put out. And I think that, all of that stimulus, I was getting a lot of training in where it might not have been volume. But I was really throwing a lot of stimulus.
It's almost like with the heart rate up and the temperature up and the power down, it's almost like altitude training without the oxygen deficit.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, although a few head spins in the afternoon, and I was hitting the Belgian beers because I was still pretty depressed about having a broken arm. So, after the evening session, I'd crack open a Leffer and
that's Gary's favourite.
As indeed.
So, I remember. Yeah, days of talking to my wife in the kitchen, just kind of thinking, what the hell am I doing? And
of course,
where is this leading, and why am I even bothering? But I think, as an athlete, also, what was my other option? Do nothing. There was no option, and I'm not saying that I spent 4 weeks just fully motivated every day to jump on the home trainer, but there were. As an athlete too, I think, you fall off, you break your arm, and the first thing you want to do is jump back on the bike, or you want to ride and say, look, I'm okay, I'm still an athlete.
Taken from that, what you've had to go through with the broken arm and spending that time on the home trainer, and then you come in, where does it take you? Well, it takes you to the final selection in Roubaix. And then not only have you just lost the wheel, but you've had the mental strength to get back on the wheel, and not only that, as you've just went and hit them and just went through, just attacked. So probably one of the best Roubaix I've seen in terms of the finale. Just watching everybody hitting each other, and everybody was on their knees.
Yep.
You could see they were all on their knees, but it was almost the psychological game. Somebody's attacked, but if I go over the top of them, am I going to crack them? That's what when I was watching it, that's what it was like.
Yeah, it's almost like they all had almost the same level of ability, but it was like just a mental game. It's like if I go straight over the top, like I'm going to try and crack them. But then let's not forget, you were going up against Boonen, who's literally had hundreds of professional victories, in all due respect to yourself, Mathew, with a lot less. And then going into that velodrome again, reiterating the underdog. And obviously you're leading, all your rivals would have knew about your broken arm as well. So in their eyes, they're probably thinking like, geez, he is doing some right to even be here. So in their eyes, they probably thought they were going to take you perhaps in that finale. So you get onto the velodrome there, and we know that you've got a track background. So do you think then that started to almost favour you, whereas like the perfect moment, you were a kid, young Aussie kid growing up in Australia, you went to the track early on, and here you are, one of the biggest single day classics of all time. You're in the velodrome, you're in the front five, and you're now going for the win. Talk us through that, Mathew. I mean, I'm getting hairs on my arms now just even thinking about it.
You're making me nervous thinking about it. Look, I mean, and I've wondered what it'd feel like. You sit there and you think, what would that be like to be racing down that road? And strangely, I kind of wasn't feeling that nervousness. I wasn't feeling that. I really was just, going with the flow. It was like racing as a kid, to signposts to towns and things like that. It really was just you going over the top of each other, and is that guy going to get on the wheel? Just like when you race in the chain gang. And that's kind of how it was. It was just back to kind of instincts and moving, and I wasn't feeling the enormity of the moment. But there, coming onto the track, I did feel like wanted to get onto the podium, to stand on the podium inside the velodrome, would have been for me, a career kind of validated. And I felt the best way was to lead out, coming from a track background. If you go into the last bend and guys have to come too wide, they have to go up the track, they have to get around. We're riding on tyres that are, 3.5, 4 bar. So, I felt like on tired legs after 260k, if I was able to hit the front, good luck to anybody who wanted to come around me. And I figured Tom would, or, it was just kind of my best defense for trying to get on the podium. And I remember looking through my legs a couple of times and just, I'm not sure where the power came from, but it was there, and he wasn't coming quick enough. And yeah.
It started to sink in. You actually won it. My goodness, Mathew, that must have been absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's not every day you get over Tom Boonen in Roubaix, and especially in that situation. He's won a lot of races in that situation, and normally he's pretty cool under pressure. So yeah, did really the last part of that race, probably from the moment I got back on at the end of Carrefour de l'Arbre, things were kind of on autopilot. I was kind of doing and not really thinking, not really making a lot of decisions. And then when I got across the finish line, it was kind of like, oh, what's people going to think, and what just happened? I hope there's nobody up the road. I tentatively put my arms up. I'm thinking, I have won this, haven't I? I was pretty sure there was no one up the road, but they're kind of. I'm not sure this just happened.
And then it was when somebody actually comes and confirmed it to you. Yeah. That was when it seemed to just kind of sink in. The testosterone, all that adrenaline's kind of went away, and then you've just kind of, oh wow. But I mean, not only Tom Boonen, but I mean, Bosenhagen, and then Mark Stannard. I mean, Stannard the year before, I think it was when he did that ride in was it Hip News Blood? When he smashed 3 quick steps.
Yeah. No, look, and I've been teammates with Bosenhagen and Ian. I've raced Tom most of my career, and Sepp was, still is the coming man of classics, and has been every other position other than winning a big classic. I mean, all those guys had a right to think that I was very much the underdog, and I probably wouldn't have backed myself in that situation now being a director. But yeah, look, and I guess the attack in the last 2Ks, that put everybody on notice, and I think also Tom afterwards, having to react to that attack, and only just I didn't realise at the time that he was in so much trouble to even get back to me just before we entered the track. I think he felt his legs there and knew that something was up, So
on the podium though, he did look, when you look at his face and he was looking at you holding that the cobble up. It did look that he was happy for you to have that. It was almost like he was a bit in awe of.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, damn, I should have won that. It
was amazing. Somebody that has won so much and would have to answer to a whole country that expected him to win his 5th, to take a record.
Yeah.
And to be beaten by a relative unknown. It was going to be hard for him to go back to Belgium and explain that. Yet he didn't show any of that emotion, and he congratulated me. He was very, very kind about it. Said some very nice things about me and how it would change my life, and how I'd been a tireless worker for other people, and that he was happy for me. Which takes some, I'm not sure I would be able to do the same thing if I was in his situation, 100%.
How do you think that has changed your life in terms of where you live, especially?
I wanted to make sure my house wasn't burnt down. I tried to get an interview straight away with Flemish television to, speak a bit of Dutch and make sure that everybody knew that I was an all right guy.
Yeah.
Changing my life. It has in some ways. I mean, you come home and you've still got to get back to training. You've still got a wife and kids, and really they don't care. They really don't care if I won Roubaix or not. The K still had to be done. There was a lot more racing. Me as a rider, I think I was a lot more confident just in myself. I remember going to Tour de France that year and not being, just feeling like, well, I'm being dropped now. This gruppetto is now the gruppetto of a Roubaix winner. I wasn't comparing myself to other people all the time, and felt like, that I didn't really have to, prove myself to anybody anymore. I could just be who I was. So, but I was worried straight after that event that I'd be, disappointing in any other race, because I knew I wasn't going to come back and win it another 3 times. I wasn't 21 anymore. But really that wasn't the case. People were just happy to see me win it once and to get back to my normal job of helping guys.
Within Espresso Cycle Coaching, we've got some cracking young lads that are just on the verge of hopefully getting some pro contracts, and we've also got our riders that are focusing on Grand Fondos. And for your career, one big word that gets mentioned a lot is persistence. And that's something that even I've heard you mention in some interviews. Just to sort of kind of round things up, is there anything just following on from there that you can sort of give people advice in regards to their training and just their mental approach towards these events, and some of the young guys to make the step up in their career?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been a tough year for everybody, but I do really, we got to race the Tour de France as a professional team, but I do feel for a lot of these young guys that have really missed out on a year, a pretty critical year, a stepping stone. I was pro for 20 years, but only amateur for 3. So they were the 3 years that I had to kind of make it. So it's been a tough year for those guys. And I guess the one thing that come back to would probably be, as you said, persistence, but just really consistent. There's a lot of 1%ers out there. There's a lot of little things, and they have their time and their place, and when you do need to use them. But consistently good eating, good sleeping, and consistent training. I think that's the 99%er. So that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. The 1%ers, they often cost a lot. They're often fiddly and time consuming. And they have their place if you want to win the Tour de France. But just getting the basics done, I think, will give you the most bang for your buck.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Great advice. Cool. Well, thank you so much again for your
Never
time.
give up. Just keep coming back.
Yeah, exactly. Keep riding.
Always keep riding.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks again, Matthew, for entertaining us and taking our call again. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you're ever over in Scotland, you're more than welcome to come and stay at Chateau de Dave, and I'll take you out some of the routes round about here. And Gary, if you're ever over in America, I'd imagine Gary will do the same over there.
My fridge will be lefties full to the brim, Matthew, if you're in the area, mate.